So evening everyone, it's great to see so many familiar faces. I'll always love it when we get together and do things like this. I'm really excited tonight because we have got the amazing and the fabulous Troy Magennis. Don't let me down, Troy. I'm building you up here. I'm building you up.
Don't overdo it. Don't overdo it.
Well, I am. What I love about Troy is I first met him many years ago when he first sort of started giving away lots of his spreadsheets to be able to help make statistics and math nice and easy. And still today, he's producing loads of stuff and updating artifacts and happy to answer all of these questions. And for me personally, on my Kanban journey, being able to make this type of stuff reachable and usable is something that's been really important. And so, you know, for me, it's fantastic to have somebody who contributes so much to the Kanban community and any community where there's math to be done. So made a big impact on my life. And so that was a great pleasure to be able to invite him along tonight to talk about his new talk around managing risks and dependencies. So with further ado, I've built you up now. Don't let me down, Troy. I'm handing across to you.
Do my best. Thanks everyone for joining. Yeah, I was almost there in London, but in April, but to no avail. Something went wrong. I can't remember what it was. So anyway, thank you for joining. So this is a no math talk. Don't freak out. Don't hang up because Helen mentioned the word math or statistics. There's a lot of simple things we can do, and this goes back. I'm going back in history here to about 2014, about sort of how we manage metrics around impediments, blockers, and sort of dependencies and so forth. And I just think it's good to sort of refresh people's thinking on this, because I don't see a lot of movement in the metrics side on blockers and dependencies, and I want to help you change that. Now, the Miro board that Helen is posting into the chat window, let me just share my screen. This is how we do things nowadays, isn't it? We use Miro. The only thing I want you to be able to do is see this little frames button in the bottom left-hand corner. I want you to click on that after you open it. And up here, when you open it, it'll be these big screens. Just click on that little hamburger and it'll give you all these frame numbers. I'm going to do it on my screen, so you don't need to. But if you want to, this Miro is yours. It's open to the public. You can steal anything in it for doing the exercises we're going to do, take the material, run it internally, do whatever you want, just don't sell it. When we get to doing some of the exercises, you have the option of going to breakout rooms. And if you want to go to a breakout room and participate, you will have to have this Miro open. And I will be giving you the frame numbers of frame number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and so forth, so you can keep up. And I'm a terrible locker, so I probably didn't lock that image down well enough. Okay. So first of all, just a level set there on, this comes from some work Klaus Leopold did for Leadability there in Vienna. And we did a co-talk in about 2014 on blocker clustering and how to handle and run metrics about blockers. And, you know, it starts off with this concept of, you know, we have things on our board, Kanban boards or task boards or in Jira, and occasionally they get these little red post-it notes on them to block them. And that was in the early days there, our indicator that something is blocked, we need help to get this flowing again. Now, in the real world, you'll see the picture on the right here, you'll sort of see there's this sort of wall of pink blockers in most organizations, however they track their work. And what do we do about it? If development is blocked twice, they have two choices. They can either try and unblock something or just increase WIP by taking on something new that's not blocked. So often we see, or I see, that high WIP goes hand in hand without a practical way of managing and escalating blocked work. So a lot of the work I do when I look at flow metrics is look for lack of flow metrics. And we know that high WIP leads to high cycle time, but what I want to know is what's the cause of the high WIP? And most often it's unmanaged blockers. We need to start sort of thinking about how we sort of uncover the root causes of those blockers, put an economic value on them so people understand why they should be fixed, and then go about fixing them and measuring whether you made the impact you expected. So that's what we went around with blockers. And of course, one of the biggest blockers that we often have, anyone want to guess what the biggest blocker is that I see nowadays?
COVID?
COVID is a blocker. Yeah, that's people working remote who aren't used to working remote, getting blocked and not raising their hand. It's a good one. But it actually, Jira, yeah, it's dependencies on other teams and other people. So as we sort of went up to scaling, one of the reasons we couldn't finish the bit of work we had is we required someone else to do something to help us move it along the chain. So depending on where you look, it may no longer be a blocker for you as a team, but if we zoom out and look at a higher level of coordinating work through an entire system, it's the feature delivery is blocked nevertheless, sitting in someone's queue, sitting waiting somewhere and not having hands on it. So I find that blocker management and dependency management actually go hand in hand. And if I could pick the number one cause when organizations took their teams agile, but not their organization agile, their biggest indicator and leading indicator of them having problems with flow is that they'll have high dependencies and they won't manage them well at all. So I want you to think about blockers at that multiple levels. One is a team level where we represent it on this board and people can sort of jump in and help out. And then I also want you to think about it as a blocker of work at the 10,000 foot level of a feature flowing through an entire system, also being blocked, making no progress because it's sitting in the backlog in Jira and no one understands where its priority fits against everything else. Okay. So back in 2014, Klaus came up with the concept of, well, how do we actually grab those red Post-it notes off these Kanban boards and do something useful with them? Well, let me sort of show you what sort of roughly what we want to do there. And in the paper world, and we're sort of moving away from the paper world now. So you have to think about this or how you would apply this in your online digital context. But in the early days there, we would collect all those red sticky notes. And this is the bane of my existence. An angel loses its wings every time there is a garbage bin underneath a Kanban board and there's red Post-it notes in it. If there is a garbage can anywhere near your Kanban board, remove it. Because what happens is people unblock something and throw that red sticky note away. And that red sticky note is invaluable for capturing metrics on how often a type of blocker occurs and the impact of it, how many days it blocked work when it was in play. So if you could just find a way of adding value to those red pink sticky notes on work by writing a good description of why it's blocked, what the root cause of blocking is, and also just some straw man sort of link of how many days it's blocked. Now, I was around when at Corbis when the first Kanban boards were going up. And this blocker data was something that we absolutely tracked. Some of the very first charts that we had was WIP and the number of items blocked. And I do not see that in any of the tools nowadays, a chart which shows blocked WIP. I see states trying to mimic it, but we need something, some way of tracking at the moment in our system, how many blockers are there, and are we sort of deferring fixing them by picking up new work and increasing WIP in general. So find a way of capturing your blocker data. If you're using Post-it notes, here's a nice simple system. If you're using an online tool, find a way of adding a chart which actually sort of there we go, which actually sort of keeps this data handy. So what do you do? Once you get those blockers, what do you do at regular intervals? Well, one is, first of all, sort those blockers into factors which can be solved only external to the team and factors that actually can be corrected internal to the team. So you need to think about these differently because some of them need escalation outside of your team and some of them your team should take responsibility for during your retrospective to solve. Why is this happening over and over again? Can we fix that? So first of all, find a way of either in a spreadsheet or a tool or Miro or Mural or physical post-it notes, sorting internal and external for the actual what would we need to do and who needs to do it to solve this root cause of this blocker and sort them left and right. Then group them based on the similar fixes. Like if we fix this one, we would have removed all of these blockers. So that's what they are in circles here. This is missing content. This is waiting for the backend API to change. This is sort of, there's sort of some other sort of various ones there. But you want to put them together and you want to total up the number of days that impacted flow. So this is obviously probably done quarterly. So this is a way you can actually start looking at it and start sort of prioritizing which one would you fix. Now, if there was one cluster of blockers here that you could fix, which one would you fix?
Well, one with 109 days of wait, I'd say. And I think this is internal, right? No, it's external. Nonetheless, how to focus my content missing, how to figure out what's the root cause for this, because this is costing us a lot of money.
Yeah, external to the team can still be internal to the company. So often what I find external here helps you highlight where you have a dependency on a skill set or another team. So it is more expensive to fix because you have to talk to someone else outside of your team. You have to talk to people, those wretched people. All right, makes sense so far? So then once you find one, that 109 days, good work, agree with that one, you got to start asking why. Why did it occur? Well, why is the content missing? Well, the customer didn't send it. Why didn't they send it? Well, often they don't know that we need it. And this is a classic thing I see in dependencies and blockers, that often the person blocking and who needs to unblock you doesn't even know that they're blocking you. You just need a way of making sure that it's better communicated when you're blocked. Why don't they know we need it? Well, we don't tell them. Well, maybe we should start telling them. So it's sort of often those really high hitting blockers have very, very simple problems. And what I'm finding in scaled organizations at the moment is mostly the problem is lack of communication. And COVID certainly enhances that, right? There's a whole set of blockers now based on people are working from home who don't want to bother other people. They just got that psychology that if they send a Slack message, they're just going to disturb someone and look like they're, us white males don't want to sort of admit any sort of failing or that we don't know something. So we just stumble along blindly and slowly. So at the moment, the blockers you're getting pre-March and post-March will be different than what you had. Secondly, there's another set of blockers now, and this is not a bad thing. Some people who didn't share their knowledge across the company very well or weren't encouraged to share their knowledge across the company very well, they become the blocker based on some piece of knowledge or some skill set that's unshared. And now if they're trying to teach their kids homeschooling because school's remote, their response time is far slower than it used to be. So don't get under the misconception that fixing blockers is once and done. It changes contextually with the landscape. Okay, so it's something that you'll fix a blocker and a new blocker will emerge, and it will be because of pressures based on society or pressure based on there's a new technology that you're implementing, a new JavaScript framework there'll be a set of blockers that are unrelated to your company, but based on someone else's timeline. So I think Apple's releasing a new OS. Every developer at the moment is now blocked waiting to submit their new upgraded app for iOS 14. It's sitting in a backlog queue of Apple now, waiting for their new app to be approved, right? Not your problem. But there's always, so I find blockers and dependencies where you fix is a very dynamic and changing environment. So you've got to capture this data continuously, and you don't have to capture it all, but you'd certainly have to capture a sample set of it to observe if you're starting to encounter blockers or dependencies from other sources which didn't happen last month or last year. And it changes over time. All right. Any questions so far on this? This is anyone already doing blocker clustering? And this is just basic stuff. All right. I don't think I have any slides in this one. Right. Slide 3. So there are some rules, and I have a problem with this one, particularly in working for in the sort of world. When I go in and people want to improve flow, essentially what they want to do is they want to actually improve flow. But in improving flow, what I find, or being able to do a forecast or having more reliable forecasts, I have to get blockers under control. I have to understand what blockers and what impedes work flowing. Otherwise, any forecast I do might be erratic based on based on a new blocker being found next month that wasn't there last month. So the only way I know that historical throughput data is valuable for forecasting is getting a handle on whether the company has a system for understanding why work doesn't flow. So blocker clustering and dependency management is a prerequisite to being able to really forecast or plan anything. So as a lot of companies don't do this technique at all, their forecasts will always be crappy, with or without me. There's nothing I can do to solve it until I understand that the historical data and the pressures on that historical data flow are going to exist next month and not change on me. So enter blocker clustering. So what I'm looking for is an understanding very quickly using the technique I just did. It takes about half an hour to find at least the top 3 reasons. And there will be 3 reasons which make up 80 to 90% of the reasons things are blocked. And that's low-hanging fruit. And in all cases, everyone already knew it before I arrived, but they weren't able to quantify the impact of it. So I'm going to give you a way of quantifying the impact of it, because you're going to have to sort of say the uncertainty these blockers and dependencies are adding to our project is more than the project itself. But there is one rule. You don't fix a blocker if it costs more to fix than the delay impact you're seeing. So if it gets less than a week's worth of delay over a 6-week sort of feature, you don't fix it. You just live with it. All right. So I really want you to understand, first of all, that there are a lot of blockers that should not be fixed. There are a lot of dependencies which should not be fixed. This isn't getting blockers and dependencies to 0. It's about understanding which ones are the majority of the impact and solving them. Any thoughts on that so far? All right.
No.
So the quickest way of doing that is just to very quickly get people to put them on a matrix, easy to solve, hard to solve, and whether it's a high impact or a low impact. And of course, you fix the high impact, easy to solve ones first, and you pick the hard to solve, low impact ones last, or not at all. But I really just focus on 1, 2, and 3. So I make people take all those clusters that you saw. I make them take all of these clusters of internal and externals there, find number 1, find number 2, find number 3. I then get them to place them on a matrix of, they're all probably high blocked. One of them will be easy to solve and one of them will be hardest to solve. I make them stack rank them. And then I fix the easiest to solve, highest impacting one that they have. Then I move on to number 2, then I move on to number 3. And once I get down to the fact that I reckon I've taken out 80 to 90% of the reasons that blocks occur. New ones will emerge, but I've taken out about 80 to 90% of the time that things are blocked. I move on. I don't spend much more time doing this. I collect data for the next month and then I reassess it at the end of that next month. So I capture continuously, but I only react once I know that there is an impact that is high enough that it's worth my time doing. So
Troy, you're thinking of blockers as just bits of work that need to be done. Someone needs to do something and you're tracking it just as a task or an item like that.
What I've found is that, and I know that some of the, and I see in the chat window that there are some tracking tools that track blockers of items. And that is absolutely a good start. I absolutely agree that yes, there's a piece of work in process that gets blocked and cannot be completed because it needs something or someone to do something. And I find that there's also another set of blockers and dependencies which aren't related to the item itself, but more of their teams or people outside of the development environment that need to do something for you to proceed. So for instance, you can't go live until legal signs off that the privacy statement has been updated appropriately for a new feature. You can't go live until the website is updated with a description of the new feature for sales. So I find that there's a class of blockers which are related to the items, and there's a class of blockers that are related to the organization. And I think it's easy, and most development teams and groups have got a handle on the blockers inside the dev environment, but they fail on the blockers and dependencies outside of the dev environment, which is why I'm not sure yet that any of the tools which track items are a long-term solution, because they're sort of doing they do a partial job of handling dependencies, and they don't work for the teams which are outside of the dev loop, if that makes sense. So I got a foot in both camps there. Does that answer your question? I'm not sure who asked it.
Yeah.
Oops, no. So exercise time. So Helen's going to create 5 rooms. Now you have a choice. You don't have to join the room you're assigned to. If you don't join the room you're assigned to, you're going to stay here on this main top left-hand matrix here that we have. You can stay here with me in this main room and we'll be doing the exercise here. Now, what are we going to do? I'm going to get you to, first of all, spend 5 minutes brainstorming blockers which you've encountered in your project or your teams at the moment, and just roughly write it on a blocker color here that you roughly sort of see, and you just double click on these. And give me an internal blocker. Anyone got an internal blocker that happened today?
The absence of light on the beginning.
What's that? Sorry.
When I got into the meetup, Alan was saying that we were waiting to Vlad to join, right? Alan, help me here. You're muted, Alan.
Yep.
Yep. Okay, so I would say that will be internal blocker to this meetup.
Well,
Yep.
it didn't. He never arrived.
No, he's here.
Arrived late? How about arrived late? Someone arrived late. And then, so you're going to spend 5 minutes brainstorming and then you can create new ones if you want. And then what you're going to do in the second 5 minutes, or as you write them, you don't have to wait, you're going to put them into this grid here. How often that person's late and it causes you to be late, and what's the impact to the rest of the meeting when it happens. So you're gonna place it sort of roughly where it happens, and then you're going to have them all relative to each other. Get the idea?
I have an idea for an external blocker.
An external blocker would be waiting for string translations. So the team can't fix that. It's gone out to an external vendor and they're waiting for string translations so that they can't really release the feature until it has string translations. Make sense? So an external blocker will be a blocker that the team can't fix. Possibly, normally it means you're just waiting on someone or something. An internal blocker might be that the test environment is unstable. Again, because God, that never happens, does it? So that's a high impact, a medium impact when it's done, and it happens almost all the time. Make sense? Now, waiting for translations probably doesn't happen very often, but when it does, it has a pretty big impact on delay because it's external.
Troy, this is Geeta. I've had a long day, so I decided not to join any room. So I have a question on this, which is, we have frequency and we have impact. Frequency as in when does it happen. What I don't see is where it happens, and that where could be anything. For example, like, you know what I mean? So I'm missing to see the where here.
Yeah, I often do multiple ones of these where I add a where to it. So it might be for this product or this group. So where, give me an example of where in your context, what are you thinking of?
So it could be like, you know, many things. For example, if there is some external vendor you like, you know, it's frequently happening with, or it could be even in the software architecture, if there is some particular area of the architecture that you're frequently finding blockers. So what is it that's causing it? So it could be either, like, you know, there, or it could be any particular department of people, or, like, you know, that's the kind of where I'm thinking about. It could be multiple things.
Yeah, so when anyone want to answer that?
Sorry, Troy, I was just wondering, maybe when we when you spoke about clustering before, that's the where would be covered there in clustering, right?
Yes and no. What do you say? Say, for example, oh, sorry, Troy, you go ahead. You were about to say.
No, you got it. You got it.
So,
You answer.
clustering, for example, I mean, this is just me because I joined 10 minutes late, and I do apologize if something has been discussed related to that. Say, for example, clustering could be, in my view, say anything, say that's crossed, say 3 months. That could be a cluster. So a cluster, again, could be multiple things. The frequency could be a cluster, and the impact could be a cluster. You know, cluster doesn't necessarily have to be aware. That's what I was trying to say. It could be, you're right, but then it need not be.
Yeah. I think that's what you need to sort of work on too. If out here in external in the clusters based on what the fix would be, you realize that it's all on the same entity. And I mean, it used to happen in the early days. There was always EDS. You always outsourced your infrastructure or IT to EDS or one of those other vendors, and it never got sort of fixed on time. So there's always sort of a root cause for some of these. So what would happen is you would find multiple clusters targeted ended up being the same group of people that would be required to fix it, and you would have to solve that solution. So you would have to introduce the where into the room when it made sense. So it would be how you facilitated the clustering that that enhanced that.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
And in this method, what I find is you end up finding that there's a big cluster, and they're all, when you sort of say, how would we fix these? The root cause is always the same where group of people. Let's do some examples. All right, so you all got access to this area. Write a few external blockers, internal blockers, and defects, and place them onto this grid with me. The release sign-off is a classic one, right? It feels so bad at the time, but it actually doesn't happen that frequently because it only happens once every release. So you gotta quantify that based on impact in days or weeks, not in frequency. I notice no one's got defects. Is it because I put the pink tickets last? Who knows?
Troy, what do you mean by defect? I mean, is this rework? Is it?
Yeah, maybe a rework of a particular type. So often I find blockers on defects are tech jet related. So what I'm trying to capture there is that every time we touch an area of code, we break it. So I'm trying to get people to find quickly which areas of the code are the danger zones. Now, if I'm forecasting a project which touches that area of danger zones, it's a very different forecast that I'm looking at than if it's in an area of the code which is brand new and fluent.
Okay.
So Helen, what the recall time on Zoom? Did you set to 1 minute or 2 minutes or?
I set it to 1 minute.
Great. Things are getting slow here now. I made you feel guilty, so you put in lots of pink notes. Good. People are making progress there.
I just thought of the least frequent. It happened once, and it caused 2 special missions. That's a high cost defect right there.
Yeah, it's why you can't rely on just frequency, and you can't rely on just impact. You've got to blend the two together. Alrighty. Everyone back?
Sure, Arnold's talking
We are
about.
all back. Yep, all back.
Excellent. So this is what I do. I tend to run this blocker clustering exercise with teams independently from each other. And then what I do is I zoom out like this, and I have a good old look at the 10,000 foot view for the colors of the blockers. Now, if they're mainly blue up in the high impact ones, you're in an organization where dependencies is your biggest bang for the buck to fix. Now, if you're in a team where there's mostly internal blockers, you're best going after process change, automation, and all the great sort of Kanban rules for team optimization, because the green ones mean it's team internal related that you can fix. Blue means that you need to sort of go off and work with other people. And what you will find is the cause of these blues would be a team that is green. And that's the team that's a priority for you to coach. Because what you're doing with this is you're doing constraint management. You're identifying the constraint at a higher level view of the organization. So pick all the teams and different teams in the value chain, get them to do this process independently. And then you will find that the blue here is related to this team. And if you could just fix the causes of these blockers in the high highs, you unblock every other team who has a blue related on that team. Does that make sense? So this is what I use to prioritize my coaching engagements or advice to companies when I go into an organization. I run this half an hour. I borrow half an hour from each team's retrospective. I ask them what blocks them. They do it as quickly as you just did in 10 minutes. I then look for which teams are most common in the blues, and I find the team that they're blocked on, and dollars to donuts, they're the ones who are blocked on majority of green stickies, and I can do something about these. Understand the logic?
Can you say it
First of
again,
all,
Troy,
you've got to
please?
classify your teams into whether the blockers are external or internal as the majority of the reason why their flow isn't flowing. Questions, comments, concerns? Okay. Now, having identified that in our organization called the Kanban Coaching Exchange, this is the team which has probably got the biggest bang for the buck of being able to improve their factors. Okay. Now, if you take away one thing from this session, take this away. Every blocker cause and fix can have two ways of rectifying it. You can find a way of reducing its frequency, or you can find a way of reducing its impact. And every blocker, one of those will be easier than the other. It's either easier to stop it happening often, or it's easier to reduce the impact when it happens. So you need to get the team to look at the pipeline broken or the PR review weight and sort of saying, is this something where it's easier to reduce the impact, or is it something that it's easiest to reduce the frequency? And your job and your role is to move it just either vertically or horizontally. Don't go striving for moving it down to here. Just first of all, set the team the challenge of reducing the frequency or reducing the impact, and make them brainstorm ideas for doing that. Don't go after impact and frequency at the same time. One is always harder than the other. So you need to address these in a way which is logical and easy for the team to do, because you want the early quick wins. So move one direction, and then once you get there, you've got other things to do. But if you did have time and ideas, your job is to try and get them down into low eventually. But it's not your first goal. Your first goal is to move it either to the left or move it down, not to move it diagonally left and down. All right, makes sense? So I don't really get into what's written on the stickies very much at all, but that's just sort of my coaching style. But I do use this very simple technique to actually find out which teams are dependency bound as constraints and which teams are process bound as constraints. I do different techniques to get these stable than I do to get these stable. And this one here is a group which has a lot more defect. They're probably on an older aging platform. I would be making the case that this team should be spending more time reducing technical debt. So there are different patterns. I don't know what they all are, but there's the three. They're dependency bound, they're process bound, or they're tech debt bound. And I just look for roughly the color mix at this zoomed out view in Miro nowadays to actually understand what that is. Do this once a month, once a quarter. You'll get a very quick understanding of where your time's best spent with teams. So again, this Miro is active for you. You can cut and paste this exercise, the template, just don't sell it if you think it's useful. But you could also just, should we ever operate in person on site again, grab a whiteboard and do a sort of a matrix on it, just do a vertical cross on it and you're done. The third one was tech debt bound. Did you get that, Karen? So process bound, dependency bound, or tech debt bound. All right. So on to metrics, which is why you all joined today. And I know you love metrics. I know you love numbers and quantifiably sort of managing. I set out, I keep this up to date. I use this process for coming up with charts and data, like where's my time well spent? And it's called Odin. It comes from Larry Mascheroni, which was too expensive for Helen to afford. So you got me instead. But Larry Mascheroni sort of says that one of the worst things you can do is show data. Because once you show data, people change behavior. So it's really in your job to think very carefully before capturing data on any team or especially an individual, but let's just stick with teams at the moment, without understanding what you want them to do with it or how it's going to be used. And I used Odom for that reason. There was a pink sticky note there. What was that?
Tell me what you measure and I'll tell you how I'll behave.
Yes, there you go. Sounds like a great Deming quote there, which is exactly what happened in the early days there. If you start throwing up a cycle time process chart and sort of saying all we care about is reducing cycle time, people will start choosing easy features to pull from the backlog, or the, or they'll check in half finished work. You're going to change behavior. So when we're going after blockers, I want to make sure I have a very clear line of vision, and everyone I'm measuring has a clear line of vision of why I'm measuring what I'm measuring. And I use Odom for that. So it starts off like this. You start brainstorming the outcomes you want at an organization. I want to lower lead times. I want fewer blocked items, and I want to get smooth and predictable flow so that I can forecast better. Let's just pick those 3 outcomes at the moment. So then I challenge the group and sort of saying, to get to those outcomes, what decisions do people need to make? Don't tell me what data they need. Don't tell me what they have. Tell me what decisions people need to make to actually cause those outcomes to come true. Well, for lowering lead times, someone says, well, we need to unblock blocked work faster. And someone says to get smoother and predictable flow now and in the future, we need to fix the root causes of blocked items. Don't just fix them one at a time by escalating and making people fix it. Let's remove the root causes to improve the whole process. So then I ask, for people to make a decision to unblock work faster, what do they need to know or see? What insight do they have to have into the system to know that that's what I want them to do? So one of them is, I need to tell others when I'm blocked. I need to tell others that something is blocked by me. I need to know that something's blocked by me, and often I don't. I don't know I'm the blocker. I'm doing homeschooling for my kids during COVID. I'm not sort of on email and on Slack all the time. I need you to know when I've unblocked you. I need everyone to know, geez, we've got a lot of blockers in progress. So how did that happen? I need to know the most frequent blocker causes. I need to know the most impactful blocker causes. I need to know that when we fix something in the root cause of the process, did it work or not? And all I'm doing is getting people to brainstorm what they need to see in order to make these decisions, knowing that if they make those decisions, those outcomes will come true or have a higher chance of coming true. You with me so far? And only then do I sort of work out which insight would give me the biggest bang for the buck. And now I work on what measures I need to do to make people see those insights. So I never just willy-nilly throw up a chart out of Jira or any of the other tools, Kanban, Agile, any of those, because if I put those charts and make them visible or talk about them, what's happening is I'm causing a behavioral change in the organization, and I may not understand the impact of that behavioral change. So I want to know and make sure that everything I show on a chart is an important insight I need people to see, and I tell them what decision I want them to make with it. I never disconnect the decision from the chart. Most companies don't even know what outcome they want when they throw data and chart against the wall and hope it sticks. Stop doing that. So I go from this. So what measures do I need? The blockers on me and by me. I need the blocker age and the blocker types. I need to know the most impactful, spelt wrong, causes. I need to know the most frequent causes. So these are the measures which would help me see these things to make these decisions. And so that's sort of what I do then. I then go and I mock up the actual sort of charts I would need. Well, how do I see how many blockers we have in progress and what's the age of them? I do a blocker in progress chart. This is open blockers which haven't closed yet, week over week. So I can sort of roughly see, are we actually having these ballooning set of blockers in progress, or are we down low here? I want to know which teams get blocked on which teams. So team 1 gets blocked on team 2 92 times. So I want to do an introduction and sort of saying, could you please attend each other's stand-ups? Or team 2, could you attend team one stand-up to make sure that you hear firsthand why your team is blocking them, and also hear the urgency of what you need to do. I keep an idea of what are the root causes of the blockers. Is it firewall? Is it on team 4? Is it an external vendor? Is it an API? This is your wheres. Remember, we talked about the wheres earlier. And I want to see how it's changing over time. So all of a sudden, our firewall occurrence rate went through the roof from July to August. Why was that? It was because everyone's working from home and the VPN needed new ports open so that people could connect to the VPN externally, and we only had one person on the help desk who could open firewall ports. So this tells me that I've got a new type of blocker type that is my biggest hitter. Where it used to be APIs, we solved that problem last month. Now my firewall is my biggest hitter on frequency of blocking teams. And this is why I'm sort of saying blockers are a dynamic environment. And then I need a little sort of tool, an app to do that. Now,
sorry, in the previous picture, Troy, if there are 2 numbers, say for example 4, 10, I first thought there were a number of blockers, but if there are 2 numbers there, what is that? Oh, is that the frequency?
That's team 4. It's just badly formatted. It's team 4.
Oh, I see. Okay, okay.
Me being crappy and lazy. So without something out there and being frustrated by it, I sort of have something that's being built at the moment, which is it's pretty simple. It has 4 tabs. We are blocked by us, and resolved. And what you can do is the legal team can absolutely see why they're blocked, and they can also see who's blocked on them. And of course, these things are actually sorted in the in the priority order, and it shows you the age of them, and you get all those charts you just saw real time live against that sort of blocker data. So you get the age, the blocker flow, who's blocked on who, how things change over time. And this is all about sort of trying to help people sort of see how many times do we, what are our APIs? We're not sort of blocked on the API very much. What is the good one there? Security. Would it kill me to put these in alphabetical order? Apparently. You know, we can start sort of seeing that all of our highest priority, which is the red ones there, are based on the security team being a constraint in the organization, and we can do something about it. So the idea is you tag these items with all the different types of reasons of the root causes, and it sort of shows them up in here that you can filter on and start finding those root causes and the groups and the wheres. So this is something I'm looking for people who can start beta testing it and using it. If you wanted to have a play and understanding of it, you can go to blockedapp.com, blockedapp.com. But you get the point. This whole app came about solely because I produced this ODM. So I produced this ODM first. I worked out what charts I wanted. And then I worked out what was the minimum amount of data I needed to capture to generate those charts. So this is a solution that I often do badly internally, but you roughly see where I'm heading there, right? You got to find a way of understanding the dependencies, the impact of those dependencies, and where they're going, and giving people sort of good sort of stats on it. So yeah, so that's my sort of theory on blockers. You sort of see this is trying to encode. It doesn't replace this. I think you still need to do this sort of quick analysis to understand the pattern of blockers and dependencies, because it matters. I think you need to help the teams understand their highest hitting item, whether it's easiest to fix by reducing its impact, or whether it's easiest to fix by reducing its frequency. And in an ongoing basis, I think you need to, you know, you might get to doing something real time like this and people being able to raise their hand. yeah, so yeah, that's all there is on sort of blockers. But don't sort of get despondent. Inside this Miro is another 1 hour sort of training course on dependencies, and you'll be able to take your teams about sort of understanding of dependencies. And I'll draw your attention to, and this is self-explanatory, if your team is currently sort of, organization has a majority of those blue post-sticky notes, those external dependencies are your highest impact on your blockers, then there's sort of 6 sort of ideas here where I sort of show you how to capture dependency history, how to deal with dependencies, how to plan with them. And there's a bad and okay and a best practice for each of them. Best practice, better than the other 2 anyway. So you'll be able to get some ideas about how to solve those blues. And on the reds, on the greens, which is the ones which are internal to the team, you're all better at. You're better at that than I am. If you're all Kanban people and coaches, this is why it was invented. It was invented to identify the blockers, see where work was sitting stagnant, and fix it. I've got nothing to add really that you wouldn't already know. But on dependencies, there's a heap of information in this Miro which will help you make a starting point for solving those. With that, I'll take questions or vodka. I don't care which one.
Okay, so if you need to go, thank you very much for coming. If you'd love to ask Troy some questions, we've got a little bit of time, so fire away.
I have one question, if that's okay. Hey, Troy. So one of the companies that I work with at the moment, we tried the Odin thing when we were introducing metrics there. The problem is the majority of places that we've gone to work in, they don't know what they are looking for or what they want to do. And so they end up just being guided by us anyway. From your experience, is there a better way for us to tackle it, to try and tease out from them? Because in the end, I end up showing them stuff that they could do or should be looking at. And I feel like I'm kind of forcing the outcomes onto them instead of them coming up with themselves. So do you have any tips? A way I could do this differently?
Yeah, it's a, I don't know, I can't find it that quickly, but yeah, send me an email offline. I have a sheet which I use to introduce people to it, and I ask them what they want first. Now, yeah, for all this talk about people creating outcomes, people suck at creating outcomes. They really don't get to it very easily, right? So I think you need to take them through one initially. And one of the very easy ones there is, do you have any way of seeing any evidence of flow in an organization at all? and if not, you know, then that's, I tend to go in with the team dashboard. Have you seen the team dashboard that I have?
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was my, this is my starting point based on your conundrum, was that when I went into an organization, they had no idea where to start. So I wanted to at least give them a way of starting, which was relatively low friction and easy and understood and ubiquitous, to be honest. Like they having no metrics at all, nothing you do in this team dashboard is gonna not be useful. And from there, so if you haven't seen the team dashboard, it's free up on there. We'll send you out some links to it. But you know, it gives them sort of cycle time average. It gives them throughput. It gives them whether they're balanced in and out of the flow. And most of all, it does it just solely on the date that work was completed, the date that it was started, and whether it was a defect, planned or unplanned work. And everything else is taken care of for them. So I can tend to get this data pretty easily, not easily. I can tend to get this data no matter what system of record they're using. And my goal was, as a starting point, to show them that data wasn't pure evil, that it actually had a way of actually getting them to understanding the team level metrics quickly. And then from there, what happens is one of them will be a disaster area, and now I get them to set an outcome on the disaster area. Your second choice there is to go back to the, you know how we did this blocker, is to show them the data from the teams, which shows exactly which impact blocker was the high zone.
Yeah.
And then sort of saying, give me an outcome that would actually reduce that high zone blocker. So
Yeah.
you're guiding them, but you're using their data to guide you. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't go in and just make a guess. I would actually want to at least spend half an hour with a couple of teams to sort of see if there's any commonality of what really blocks flow in this organization. And then I would set an outcome around that, absent of them setting outcomes themselves.
Thanks, Troy.
Troy, I had a question. You said that in your experience, it was better when you have a bird's eye view of all the boards that the teams have done at the client. It's better to first move left and then down. Moving left meant
move left or down, not end. For each one of these, there will be an easier action to take that either moves it that way or moves it that way. I don't care which one you do. I only care if you try and move frequency and impact at the same time.
Yeah, because you will be dealing with multiple root causes probably, and probably other problems. But you said something afterwards. No, sorry.
Yep, no, that's right.
Okay, I thought I said something stupid. Just afterwards, you explained something, and I missed it unfortunately because of the connection. But you were explaining something about it was a transition between this quadrant and the following one when you explained how to use numbers to show expected outcomes. Something about 3 different types of root causes, maybe.
Yeah, there were 3. I find there's 3 different kinds. So when I look at these, and the reason I don't try and move down frequency and impact at the same time is because each of the root causes or the fix you would need to do to solve this, it's easier to either move the frequency so it happens less often, or it's easier to move the impact, or it happens when it happens, it doesn't take as long to fix, rather than the same time. But what I find is there's organizations like this where there's mainly internal sort of blockers. I find there's teams like this where 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, there's a majority of external blockers based on dependencies. So in this one here, optimizing this team by putting in automation or retraining the developers or just hiring smarter developers won't fix anything because the blockers are all external. So if you try and fix this team by just optimizing at a team level, nothing will change. But if you try and change this team by optimizing how well they handle dependencies, nothing will change. Because in this team, all the reasons work gets blocked are internal to the team. And for this team, the majority of the reasons they get blocked are external to this team. So you have process changes for the team, you have dependencies, and there's a third one I look at, which is, where was a good example of it here? See this room 1, see how there's starting to get these pink stickies, which are defect-based sort of issues? This is either tech debt or the team is responsible for production. So that's they're the sort of 3. So you're either defect and tech debt related context, you're either external dependencies are your biggest bang for the buck, or internal processes and sort of fixing your development practices are the biggest bang for the buck. So they're the 3. Thank you.
So the semantics of process,
whoever did that, sorry,
is
Arun. All right. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. So the semantics of process bound is processes internal to one team, not some bigger scope process. That's the semantics. And dependency is just at the level of one team to the other, probably for this analysis, right?
Yep.
Okay. And following, sorry, you were going to say something?
No, sorry, just
The following quadrant, I didn't want to interrupt the presentation, but I didn't understand. I understand I think I understand the principle behind showing numbers and somehow seeking to change behavior through the numbers, but how does that translate, or how can I use a board to do that? How do you do it? It was the following one.
The following one, this one down here?
It had 4 columns, yes, exactly. How do you seek to change behavior?
Well, yeah, so I did skip one section there. Whenever you actually end up showing a chart or a measure, you've got to ask the question, when I show this chart and people sort of say, oh my God, I'm being measured in this area, I better make it look good. Sometimes they borrow good from elsewhere. So if we try and just optimize for cycle time alone, people may choose easy, low value items from the backlog to do. If we, so you've got to balance cycle time with some concept of value delivery to the customer. Otherwise, you'll just get one. In the team dashboard, there is a sheet there that I think there's a sheet, 6 dimensions of performance. So in the team dashboard spreadsheet, and Helen put it in the chat window so you can just download it, there's this little concept of balancing competing forces. And what I sort of say with flow is that there are 6 different competing forces on every team and every system. There's value, doing the right stuff, doing it predictably and consistently, doing it right, quality, doing lots of it, quantity, doing it fast, speed, and being able to do it in the future, resilience. And every time, sometimes when we show a chart or some data, what happens is these little people in this 6-way tug of war, called your team members, will pull too hard. So they'll pull too hard on speed to reduce cycle time. And by doing that, they inadvertently impact the other dimensions. And if you don't have something measuring those other dimensions, you wouldn't know. You would celebrate the team, give them a free pie and mushy peas based on improving cycle time. But what you've actually done is destroyed the customer value delivery. So I'm always looking for, whenever I actually put a chart up, that I understand I have a measure also measuring where they might take effort from. And so once I get to these measures, I ask the team, if I just sort of showed blockers on me and because of me, what would happen? And I'll tell you what will happen. The moment that you start showing this blocker data, people will try and solve every blocker that you show on that matrix. And you need to stop them because they'll stop doing real work and they'll start doing all tech debt reduction. They'll start fixing the root causes of the process, and they'll stop delivering feature and value work. So whenever you have a measure like this, there's a step after it which says, and if I was to only reward you based on this measure, what would you do? And then your job is to find a measure which actually shows that is happening too much, and sort of saying, I need you to balance these two, be an adult.
Okay, so I'm sure we could probably sit here and grill Troy all night, and he'd probably do it because it's morning for him. But I'm sure he's got other things. I really appreciate you giving up the time. So I'm just going to call it there if it's okay for everyone. So I'd really love to thank Troy for giving up his time and giving us something so informational. So let's give a little clap for Troy.
Thanks, Troy. And
let's bring back the clap online. You know, next month we've got Pavel Brodinsky. He's not given me his talk yet, but I'm sure it'll be awesome. He's another regular on the old Kanban scene, so I'll get that posted as soon as possible. I want to say thank you to Simon Machin for continually giving us access to a Zoom license, which means we can have loads and loads of people and don't have to limit, and can have awesome, great speakers without causing any problems to anyone else. So thank you very much to Simon and TFE Consulting. We really appreciate it. But once again, Troy, Troy, you've been amazing. Hopefully we can have you again soon. Let us know once you've got a new talk or a new thing that you want to show us, because we'll suck it up like a sponge.
No problem. I didn't embarrass you, Helen. That's all I wanted to do. My only goal was not to embarrass you.
No, you did me proud there. You can go away with your head held high. All right. Thank you, everybody. It's been great to see you all. Take
Thank
care,
you.
and I'll see you next month for Pavel. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.